Welcome, everybody. So today we have our expert talk with a very special person, Patrick Liebl, who is our lead facilitator for our psychedelic-assisted retreat programs, the Evo Shift program, and who's also an integration expert. And so we'll talk all things facilitation and integration today and find out what makes a good facilitator, what makes a good guide, and what is important when maybe thinking about looking for a retreat provider and for someone who can support you on your journey. So welcome, Patrick. How are you doing today?
Hi, thanks. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, so my first question is, so you are a psychedelic facilitator, and for those who might not know this, what does a psychedelic facilitator do actually?
Well, in a nutshell, a psychedelic facilitator guides individuals or groups of people through a psychedelic experience. But this usually also includes the preparation, then the psychedelic experience itself, and then what we call the integration. And usually a facilitator should be able to provide all three of those phases, but not necessarily alone. So for example, in the preparation phase, it is important to do a proper screening in order to see if it is even safe for the person or the group of people to go through a psychedelic experience. And for that, sometimes it is necessary to have a doctor or a therapist who would help with the screening. And the same goes with the integration. Usually all psychedelic facilitators are somehow familiar with integration, but then there are, of course, people who had done a little bit of more profound training to help maybe with some more complex or challenging integration questions. So there as well, a facilitator might actually have colleagues or some people that they can refer people to.
And generally, I mean, next to the screening that happens probably before the program starts, really, what's important when guiding people through this journey of preparation, support on site, and then integration?
Yeah, maybe I just walk you from the very beginning till, let's say, the official ending of a program or a retreat. So usually you would get to know the facilitator you would like to work with. And what is important is that first you see if this person and their approach resonates with you, because that is very important. You need to feel a sense of trust, even though you might not know this person that well, but from the information that this person or this retreat provider are offering on their website, for example, or social media channels, you need to have a sense of, okay, this resonates with me. And I think there is also good chemistry maybe between us. So there needs to be a get to know each other call at the very beginning, in my opinion, so that you can see, is this a good fit? And then if you decide that this might be the right provider for you, usually the next step is to have a proper screening. So before even starting with all the logistics, it's important to check if it's safe for you to go through a psychedelic experience. So especially if we're talking now about psilocybin, we know that it is a rather safe substance. However, there are, of course, some counterindications for this substance as well. And for some people, it is not helpful and sometimes even harmful to go through a psychedelic experience. So with a proper screening, you make sure that you minimize the possible risk. And with, yeah, a pretty good feeling can say that this experience will be one that might benefit the person. And again, you might need some assistance here from a doctor or from a therapist, depending also on the personal background and maybe also the medication that the person is taking. Once you have done the screening and you know that the person is safe to go through a psychedelic experience, then starts the actual preparation phase, where usually you would walk the participant through the retreat so that they know what is coming up, and also that you get a sense of what is important to them. Because in the end, you are there to help them go through this experience, but it should be always them deciding what is important for them in order to feel safe, for example, in order to feel supported, but also to let you know what they might not want in this experience. So, for example, you would ask them about their religious or spiritual background, and also what works well for them, what doesn't work. For example, when we think about touch, some people think it's very helpful for them to experience touch during a psychedelic experience, but other people do not want to be touched. And to talk things about that is important in the preparation phase. And then if you're working with a group of people, then of course it's also important that they get a chance to know each other even before they meet on site. So this is why at Evolute in total we have 3 group calls so that participants can get to know us, the facilitators. We can do some exercises with them to help them prepare for the experience. But we also share some important information for them in preparation for the experience, but also that participants get to know each other already. So this is why we also have group sharings in smaller breakout rooms, so that you have the feeling that you're not meeting complete strangers when you travel to the retreat. And then during the psychedelic experience, which basically is not just the psychedelic experience, but the whole retreat, there are many things that can happen. There is still some preparation usually happening right at the beginning, because usually you would not start with the psychedelic experience the moment you arrive at the retreat center. But again, it would be maybe another getting to know each other, now also in person, letting people also land on the site, getting familiar with the surroundings, but also with, again, the other participants and the facilitators. And what we usually do, or actually always do as a preparation, is a breathwork exercise. For us, this is the perfect preparation for a psychedelic experience because it can have similar effects, even though it is, of course, different. But especially those who never had any kind of an experience of an altered state of consciousness, for them, it is like testing the waters, and they can get an idea of how it might feel during a psychedelic experience, even though it might still be very different. So this is, for example, a very important point on our agenda, still in the preparation phase. And at Evolute, it is also important for us to really get to know each participant very well, which is why we also offer one-on-one coachings in preparation. So this happens even before we meet at the retreat. Every participant has a call with one of our facilitators, where we really have ample time to get to know the participant, understanding what is important to them, how we can be of best support to them, and also brief them how to prepare for the experience. And that continues even on the retreat, where we have another one-on-one coaching session before the psychedelic experience, but after the breathwork session, so that we can check in with people again, how they are doing, how they are feeling with the group, but also with the breathwork experience, and to maybe adjust the things that they wish for or need for the psychedelic experience.
May I, before you continue, just add maybe that one participant has said, "Oh, actually, you call it coaching sessions, but I feel like my conversations with my coach were more like I speak with a guardian or a guide or so on, and that it helped them sharpen, for example, their intention for the journey, and this made a huge difference for the whole experience." So he said, like, you shouldn't really call it coaching sessions, because the people don't know what expects them. It's much more guides or guardians that have an expert conversations, an intimate exchange with you, a dialogue, and then these people are like partners for the whole journey. So I don't know if you can resonate with this. So the question of how should this be called, or so, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense. I guess we called it a coaching session because it's just something that is approachable for everyone, but yeah, maybe it also is not sending the exact right message. However, you were mentioning something that I forgot, and that is the intention. And I think when it comes to the intention, so the reason why people are even going through a psychedelic experience, it really is a coaching, because we truly help them to find and maybe refine their intention by simply asking questions, which is the point of coaching session. Not that we tell them what their intention should be or is, but we really try to help them to discover it for themselves.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But I interrupted you. You were explaining more about the process on site and so on.
Yeah, so at Evolute, we have 4 days in total, which means that we have, let's say, one day still for the preparation, and then the second day is the day where the psychedelic experience happens, and then we have 2 more days where the integration already starts. And 4 days might sound like a very long time, but actually time goes by very quickly. And it's for us very important that we really have this time, that we give people the opportunity or the possibility to properly land after a psychedelic experience. Because as helpful they can also be a little bit ground shaking. And it really helps to know that you don't have to be anywhere in the next 2 days. There are no responsibilities waiting for you, and you can participate in a program that has been designed especially for helping you to ground yourself again and to re-enter the so-called normal reality.
Is this, how would you say, so integration is equals grounding, or is there more to integration? I'm wondering. So how would you define integration if you
So
could?
grounding, or sometimes I also call it landing, is an essential part of integration. And most of the times it's the first part that needs to happen in the integration process. But integration goes way beyond the grounding or the landing. So the grounding or landing really is the very early phase of integration, where we make sure that people have transitioned from their psychedelic experience back into the normal world. And I'm saying that because, of course, we know that after a couple of hours, you are officially not under the influence of the substance anymore, but you might still be in a very special place where you feel like you're still somehow in the experience. It's not completely over, which is a good thing, because there might be still things coming up, and the process continues. And you just need some time to slowly transition back by landing softly. And important is softly. This is the reason why we do 4 days, and you don't need to pack your things and drive home right after the psychedelic experience, which in some cases happens with people when they go into an ayahuasca ceremony that happens overnight, and then the next morning they have to drive back to their homes. Yeah, for me, that's not a soft landing. And it also cuts the process a little bit short, because again, if you give it time and space, there might still be things unfolding, and we have time for that during the retreat. And also offering different practices that are helping you to stay connected to the experience, but at the same time get grounded and land in reality again. So already at the retreat, there is the integration phase happening, but we then also have 3 additional group calls after the retreat that are completely dedicated to the integration process, where it's usually about finding the meaning of your experience, also harvesting the pearls that you might have discovered in your experience, and help you to take action and to do the changes that you wish to have in your life based on the discoveries that you made in your experience. So we do this with the group, but again, there is an additional one-on-one coaching session where we have, again, more time and depth for everyone's individual process. And I think this is very helpful, because the group sessions are important so that you have this sense of community and also hear from everyone else's experiences. But at the same time, the time that we can dedicate to each participant is limited in a group session. And this is why it's important to have the one-on-ones on top.
Yeah, and let me add, like I would say, the integration phase can be on many levels, so personal and professional or leadership oriented. And I think that's one of the things that also is maybe special about the way we look at it. It's not just how you integrate the insights and lessons into your personal life, into your relationships with family and friends, for example, but really also to look up and out into the world and see like, okay, how do I want to show up as a person based on what I have seen and learned, the insights I've gained, and other larger implications for how I want to, for example, lead my organization, my company, or my team, if I'm in a leadership position, for example, or lead myself in relationship to my client if I'm self-employed, and so on. Yeah, so one way I also like about it, and I don't know if that resonates, is like integration is also to maybe think about practices that could help you to recreate certain state experiences. So people who would then, I mean, I don't know, you can tell me like what people often might start doing, but one of the observations is people might start a meditation practice or so on. And for example, if you have a meditation practice, it kind of recreates a certain state experience. So it's a practice that reactivates maybe elements of your psychedelic experience. And so you keep it closer to your heart, the lessons. Otherwise, they might just fade from memory. I don't know if you would agree. And what are things, for example, that people typically do as integration practice, or what do you teach them? I don't know what is possible.
I mean, there are so many practices, and what is helpful always depends on the context and the person's experience. But what you were referring to, like keeping this this connection to this peak experience, I think that is important for people who really had the very first deep altered state of consciousness in the psychedelic experience, and maybe for the first time, really, at least consciously, witness that there is a different way of being and perceiving than we are used to with our normal consciousness. And for those people, it is important to seek practices that keep them connected to that. And that can be meditation. So even if they have been meditating before, they will notice that their meditation practice might have a different depth to it. That they are able to achieve different states of consciousness now through meditation than before. So for some people, a psychedelic experience can truly also be an initiation. But it can also be anything related to mindfulness, to just be the observer of your own mind and to witness yourself going into quick judgments and to maybe also stop yourself from always following your monkey mind and also being more connected to your bodily sensations or your emotions. And for some people, the playlist that we are playing during the psychedelic experience can be a very powerful way of reconnecting to this experience, because the music really carries some of the energy that has been released during the psychedelic experience. And I usually advise people as a very nice integration practice to just take a Saturday or Sunday afternoon off to make themselves comfortable in the living room, maybe light some candles to maybe recreate some of the atmosphere that we had at the retreat. To lie down, maybe even with the eye shades, and then listen to the playlist, the whole playlist. And even if you do that without any substances, it can get you back into your experience, and maybe there might be even more things coming up during that time.
Or go into nature, maybe. I don't know, with the playlist as well, right? So
yeah, I mean, there are so many possibilities, and what is important is that we don't tell people these are the best practices. We give them some options, but then we help them to really find the best practices for them. And this can be very different from each person. But yes, a lot of people also resonate a lot with spending more time in nature. But it can also be something like creating a little altar in your home that kind of reminds you of the experience, where you maybe put a picture that you connect to the experience, or maybe is even your own drawing, because we invite people to express their journey also visually, and to get a little bit creative with that. Yeah, so again, there are so many practices.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say like there's an ecology of practices, and people can see what suits them, which is and those practices can be at the level of the body, of the heart, of the mind, and of the spirit, different practices. And in the end, everyone is invited to find their own path. And for me personally, for example, it's a lot about somatic work and body work, and for example, touch and by professionals that know about body work, really wholesome body work. This has been very great for me for my personal integration process. But of course, some people don't really like to be touched or don't like massage, for example, and or they may be going into the mountains regularly, maybe even with a playlist that, by the way, you curate. I have to say, you said like there's a playlist, but I mean, you created this playlist, and it was like to fantastic applause always by all participants that this is like the best playlist ever. So yeah, so as you say, there are probably many ways. One thing I'm curious about, because now we almost like we have like a high level view of the whole journey, and then we zoomed into integration already. But probably people who have never had an experience, they ask like themselves, but what does a psychedelic facilitator do during the psychedelic experience? So what am I doing? Like, am I lying? Am I standing? Do I have my eyes open? Am I outside, inside? And how do I interact with the guide or the guides, if there are several, right? Could you maybe speak to that so people know better about what actually happens really during the psychedelic?
So in our setting, the psychedelic experience is a journey inwards. So this is why we focus on what is happening inside of us and not on the outside world. So we go through the psychedelic experience all together. I mean, at least the participants and we facilitators are here to hold the space. Everyone has their own mattress with their duvets and their pillows, so they can make themselves really comfortable on big mattresses, and they have a blindfold, which really helps them to not get distracted from the outside. And usually it doesn't take a lot of guidance from us outside, because the process unfolds in a very natural way, and people usually will find their own flow with the experience. We are just there to support and to help if necessary or wanted. But other than that, we don't interfere with the process. It's not our job to ask any questions or to comment on anything that is happening. The participants really stay by themselves with their own experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is really what holding space is all about, right? So you're there, you're present, you're almost part of the protection of the room where the activities happen, and people can sense your presence, and you're kind of an anchor and give stability. And you might then also touch, right? Because before you talked about touch and the consent for touch. So does it happen often, or like how does it happen? Like touch in psychedelic ceremonies, like the ones like in a small group, like 8 to 10 people with a couple of facilitators we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, each ceremony, of course, is different. Every ceremony has their very own energy, and no ceremony is better than the other. It's just a different energy. And sometimes some ceremonies might be a little bit more lively, and some others might be a little bit more quiet. But since you were asking about the touch, so for us, it's important to at least offer the possibility of touch. Again, it's we always ask for consent, and there might be actually good reason why for some participants touch is not helpful or maybe even harmful. But if there is consent, what we do is we offer touch as a way to help participants to stay grounded, in the sense that they are reminded that they are not alone. Because you can be carried away in a psychedelic experience. I mean, that's the goal in the end, to really lose track of reality. And sometimes you might forget that you are in a group setting with people watching over you. And you might feel that you are completely alone with the experience. And to have a gentle touch on your shoulder, for example, as a reminder that, hey, we are there just in case you need us, can be very helpful. What is important is that by touching someone, for example, on the shoulder, we do not send any message towards them in the sense that there's something they need to do or we are worried about them. It's really just a gentle reminder. But what can also happen is that participants specifically ask for a hand, for example, when they are going through a challenging part of their experience, and it's important for them to have a hand to hold, or to just sense the presence of someone sitting next to them. Some people ask us to just sit next to them without any touch, but they need the presence of someone to their right or to their left. And this can make a difference in the experience.
I wanted to ask you about challenging and difficult experiences. So what facilitators can do then? So what if someone gets sick, or other complications might arise? What can happen, and what would the facilitator do then? Could you speak to that?
Well, I would first start with what the participants themselves can actually do. And this is also part of our preparation, that we give them some tools and some techniques that are helpful for them during the psychedelic experience, when they might have the feeling that things are getting a little bit more challenging. But of course, we facilitators are also there to support. So one important tool that we already talked about, is touch. We can, of course, sometimes see when people are going through a challenging part of their experience, and that would usually be an indication for us that maybe I'm going to approach this person and maybe they already feel my presence and this is helpful, or I can also offer some gentle touch. If the person needs a little bit more support, we can also do some breathing exercises together with them, or other grounding practices, also practices that help them to go into the body, for example.
And can people go outside, for example, or how does that work?
So we usually advise people to really stay in the experience and with the experience, but sometimes it can really be important for someone to just step out for a moment to get some fresh air. And then, of course, we can provide that for them. Yes.
And what would you say, what are important qualities psychedelic facilitator should have to be a good facilitator?
So I think what is most important is being present, being truly present during a psychedelic experience, even though it might seem like from the outside that not a lot is happening, to be aware that there is a lot happening, and to have your full attention and awareness on the participants. I think it's also important to not assume what people are going through. This can be a little bit tricky because, of course, all facilitators have had their own experiences. And in some way or another, you compare the experience that you might see in front of you with your past experiences. But it is not wise to assume that you know what the person is going through. So this is something that is important for me, that we always stay open-minded and don't make any assumptions, and instead follow the lead of the participant, because they themselves know much more about their experience than we can see them from the outside. And then I think it's also, which relates to that, is it's important to stay curious. So to always know that there's more to learn from every experience, and to not think that you know how things are going to unfold, and to really, yeah, be curious how this experience might yet be a different one from the 100 other retreats that you have been facilitating before.
Mhm. And but I mean, are there any character traits that might be helpful? So I mean, some people are good to go to the army, and others are good to become librarians. And maybe are there certain personality traits that are helpful for facilitators? And are there certain trainings that are necessary to become a psychedelic facilitator?
Well, when it comes to the personality, I think every facilitator also brings their own personality, but it's definitely important and necessary that you are able to reflect on yourself and also being aware of your inner processes, and not to numb them or to exclude them from a psychedelic experience that you are facilitating, because they are always a part of you, but to know how to contain them and to know that this is not the time now for your own processes to unfold, but it's the time to hold space for others. And this might sound like a no-brainer and quite easy, but actually this does take quite some training and also self-experience, I would say. So you definitely need to have had your own share of experiences in altered states of consciousness, and also other trainings and modalities that help you to better understand yourself, and also where maybe some triggers might be coming from that are relevant to you. And yeah, so I think you need to want to understand yourself first before you try to help others. I think that's very important. And when it comes to trainings, so nowadays, luckily, there are some trainings that are offered. And I also think that there are some good ones. It is always tricky to combine the theory with the practice. Because you can learn all the theoretical parts of how to become a psychedelic facilitator quite easily. There's a lot of information accessible for everyone, but then to get the practice is a little bit more difficult, because first the practice starts with your own experiences. It is understandable that some people, after their own first psychedelic experience, might feel the calling to become a psychedelic facilitator. And I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, and I would encourage everyone to stay on that path. But before you start looking for any trainings, how to help others, it is important that the training really starts with your own experiences. And you need to have had a couple of experiences yourself before you can then think about joining one of the trainings that will truly help you to become a psychedelic facilitator. And I would even say that even after the training, I would always recommend to first look for teams where you can work as an assistant, where you know that you are not the one carrying the responsibility, but where you have the opportunity to learn from others, and also more experienced facilitators.
Yeah, so the apprenticeship model, and but like in a team, basically of professionals. So and then to learn kind of via mimesis also after you had the real training. So by also seeing how others are doing it. But I think this point you made is very valid. So it's often said that a traveler in the psychedelic experience can only go as deep as the guide has gone. So as the guides have gone, if it's several, of course. So because our nervous systems are really intelligent and they have a good sense, like, is it safe? And can the other person hold the space? And they can only really credibly hold the space when they themselves have a certain depth to them in their own experience and process. And the point that you made, I think, is very important. That you have to be able to see your own limits, your own shadows. So do your own shadow work, you could say, so that you're not getting like caught up in some dynamics with participants because you yourself have unresolved issues. And of course, this is a lifelong process to do your own inner work. And this, so a good facilitator, I think, is on their own path, right, of own inner development work and continuous training and learning and intervision and supervision and everything. So you constantly push yourself also to stay at the edge and to do justice to the participants' processes.
Yeah, and this also emphasizes the importance of working in a team, because when you have colleagues and you have proper briefing and debriefing sessions with everyone before and after the retreat, then they will help you to see your shadow again if you might forget it. And this is also why even if just one person is deciding to go on a psychedelic experience, I would never recommend to guide this person alone. I think there are many good reasons why there should always be two people guiding even just one person. Yeah.
Okay. Beyond the male-female diet, sometimes like in the psychedelic psychotherapy, you often have like a man and a female, male and female therapist or clinician or whatever there to represent maybe certain archetypes or so. But even beyond that, you would say to be professional and ethically in line, it's much better to do this, or how?
Yeah, I have to be honest that I'm not 100% convinced if it's really always necessary to have one male and one female facilitator, because in the end, gender also is a spectrum, and I think different people also have different energies inside of them. And in the end, it is important that it resonates with the person, yeah. And if the person, for example, prefers two female facilitators, then why not? No, but I think it's important to have two facilitators because it can happen that there are some dynamics happening between one facilitator and the participant that are not helpful for the process of the participant. And then you have the possibility of maybe taking a step back, and the other facilitator is then a little bit more present. But also to know that there's always another person that you can check in with when something is happening that you are not sure how to react to. Yeah. So I think for the whole dynamic of the experience, it's better to have two facilitators in the room. Also that, for example, the person who is going through the psychedelic experience has more than just one opinion about what happened in the experience. If they are, for example, asking the facilitators about what they saw from the outside or how they experienced the interaction.
I would also say, I mean, a psychedelic experience is long, like a psilocybin truffle ceremony, for example, 4 to 6 hours. So of course, being with several facilitators allows people also to have breaks, go to the restroom, recharge, have a sandwich, whatever. So that's of course also great that you can take turns in supporting. And when there was like a more challenging situation, you were giving a lot of energy into someone's process, then of course afterwards to be able to take a break is also great. So self-care is of course an important topic for facilitators. Right?
We talked about presence before, and even though some people might argue it is possible to be present for 6 hours straight, maybe, but I think it's definitely easier when you have the possibility of taking some breaks in between and then again be fully present when you're back in the room, instead of maybe not being fully present during 6 hours because you just feel your energy going down as well because you might need something to eat or a fresh some fresh air outside.
Yeah, so you said like to have, so to summarize, I mean, you would say, so a good facilitator has maybe had some trainings, but is on a continuous path of learning and development, also self-development. There's a spirit of service, of course, capacity to hold space, but also to attune with empathy and compassion, maybe including touch when it's needed, when there are periods of grief, of fear, of anger, of other emotions coming up. And to know about professional, ethical interactions in this arena or space where there's a high degree of susceptibility of people who are taking the substance, of course. So people are easily influenced. So it's a great deal of, I mean, care and responsibility, what you say and when you say something and so on, or how you hold the space. And is there anything else that might be good, or you say no, that sums it up, like in a way, a great profile of a facilitator? You also mentioned the apprenticeship model, like really to learn through assisting like expert guides for some time.
I think what is also important is to not have an agenda of what should happen. And again, this can be tricky when you get to know a person and you might understand what their struggle is. And you might even have an idea of what kind of experience would help them to go through this difficult time and to help them to maybe resolve some of the issues. And then you might be kind of wishing for some specific experience for this person, and you might even unconsciously try to push for this experience to happen. And I think it's very important not to do that, and to trust the process, and also to trust that everything will happen at the right time. And yeah, so especially as a facilitator, sometimes it can also feel a little bit challenging to learn how not to do anything, to just let the process happen, and to understand that your intervention usually is not necessary. And if it is, then the participant will let you know. But it's not because the participant, for example, is in a part of the process where you might think they are struggling with something, or there might even be resistance, that it is your job to help them to go through that. That's definitely not the case. So I think it's also important to really be able to trust the process and to be patient.
Yeah, so now we talked about like, so what psychedelic facilitators do, what's important when guiding people, what an archetypical process can look like, and what's important in the different phases of supporting, even what happens when there might be more difficult or challenging experiences, what a facilitator can do then. And also we talked about what makes for a good facilitator. And now I'm curious about you, like, so how did you get into this? What was your path into this line of work? And maybe you can share a bit about your background and how you came to do what you're doing today. I mean, guiding at different retreats for quite some time now.
So I think, like with many others, my path to the psychedelic work started with my own experiences. But maybe what is helpful to know, even before that, I was working already as a coach for 10 years, and was interested in personal development and also narrative work. And for me, the psychedelic experiences really helped me to understand that there is so much more that I can learn about personal development, and also different perspectives that can help me in my own personal process, but also in the work that I'm doing as a coach. So for me, it was quite obvious very soon that I would like to expand my work with the help of psychedelics. But before I started to work in this field, I of course had to have had my own couple of experiences. So I was at the beginning more focused on myself and my own process, before I then started to work as an integration coach, which was the most obvious way for me to start this work, since I was already working as a coach, and integration was very important for my own experiences. Back then, there were not really many offerings when it comes to integration. So, for example, the retreat that I was participating in my first experience did not offer any kind of integration. It was not part of the experience. So, what I did is that I read a lot of books, signed up for a lot of trainings and also workshops that helped me with my own integration. I learned a lot about the importance of integration, and then got the training so that I could offer integration workshops and integration coaching. So this is how I started this work, while at the same time continuing with my own experiences. And then I took the next step and got trained for the facilitation. At the same time, I also became an end of life companion. So I also did training to guide people at the end of life. And I'm mentioning that because this was also extremely helpful in preparation for my facilitation, because guiding people at the end of life is not unsimilar to guiding people through a psychedelic experience. And I would even say that the most important lessons that I learned from my work as a facilitator, I got from my end of life trainings. And then was the moment that I felt I was ready to guide people through psychedelic experiences. And I did it exactly as I suggested it before. I joined a team where there were very experienced facilitators, and I learned a lot from them. I think in general, to have more experienced facilitators is extremely important, so that you can update the theoretical knowledge that you have with the practical experience from people. And you just learn a lot by just observing how other people are doing it. Of course, also finding your own style. But I learned a lot from learning from observing others and having long conversations with some of my colleagues.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, and there's, I think, also intervision between experienced guides, right? They meet and exchange cases, discuss case studies in a way, and discuss practices, how to what to learn from those cases and what to get better, right? So there's also continuous, like with real serious professional guides, like they're part of a guild of guides, or like then a group that meets regularly, right, to do intervision and supervision and so on, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we at Evolute, we have the advantage of already being a team where we have intervision. So we are already learning from each other. But even beyond that, I think it's important to find other facilitators where you can learn from. So there is an organization called the Guild of Guides in the Netherlands, which is a guild for psychedelic guides in the Netherlands. And they too are offering intervision or supervision. And it's extremely helpful to participate there and to learn from everyone's experiences. And I also have decided to have more one-on-one supervision because it's just helpful for me to have supervisors who are completely dedicated to myself. I learn a lot from the group supervisions, but for me, it's also important to really have proper time where I can focus on my own processes, but also on my own work.
Yeah. And then you said like that your end of life work, accompanying people at the end of their lives, is similar to the psychedelic work, and that my first reaction was, oh, that sounds a bit scary. So does it mean like I'm dying when I have the psychedelic experience? Like, is this a famous ego death experience that you were alluding to, or what were you alluding to? In which ways is it actually similar, this kind of?
In one way, you could say that in some psychedelic experiences, it feels like you are dying because your sense of self really dissolves. But of course, you're not dying in the physical sense. But it has a lot to do with letting go, which of course is the number one theme when you are in the process of actually dying. But this is actually not what I meant by that. What I meant is that like giving birth, the process of dying has a natural logic. And what I learned in my trainings is that it's not so much about interfere in this process, but trusting the inner intelligence of this process. That somehow we humans or our body knows how to die. And the best we can do is not stand in the way of this process and support where it's helpful and sometimes also necessary, but it's less about doing things and more about allowing things to happen and unfold. And for me, it's very similar in a psychedelic experience. There is an inner logic to every psychedelic experience. And when it's in the right setting and with the right support, this process will come also to a natural end. So it's really about trusting the flow of the process and knowing that it's more about taking a step back and to create a safe container than about interfering and doing things and trying to direct the process in a certain direction. So this is why, for me, guiding people through the end of life and through a psychedelic experience is similar. Also because both are in a very vulnerable state, and they might not even be able to verbalize what they need. And you might just trust that they can communicate with you through their body language or also through the energy that they are sending out. And yeah, it's also about the responsibility that you have, especially because they are in such a vulnerable place. There's a lot of responsibility that you have. And it's important to be aware of that and also to stay humble. You're not there to save anyone. You cannot save someone from dying, but you can be there to support someone through this process. And it's similar with the psychedelic experience. You cannot go through the experience on their behalf. You cannot save them from anything, but you can be by their side and let them know that they are not alone.
Yeah, that really resonates. When you say this, I want to ask you this. I mean, maybe for most people it would be the worst thing to die alone, and but if we are being witnessed in our experience, right, or we sense that there's a presence with us in this experience, then there's probably much less suffering and even some consolation in this. And this might be very wholesome, or part of what makes it wholesome, or where we can find peace with something. And I think in this, it's maybe very similar to, especially to, let's say, a challenging psychedelic experience, and then maybe the process of, as you said, letting go, of saying goodbye, of finding peace after a struggle or so. So, I mean, yeah, that resonates. Thank you. On the more fun side, I wanted to bring in that on Mount Athos, a Greek peninsula, there are many monasteries, and in one of the monasteries there's a note tag or so that says, if you die before you die, you don't need to die when you die. Anpesanis, prempesanis, dentapesanis, otanpesanis. And I think this is also what is meant when we say it's similar in a way. So for many people, a psychedelic experience that is very deep is something like dying. That doesn't mean that it must be painful necessarily. It can be if you struggle against it. But if you know how to let go, to yield, to surrender, then actually it is like a complete letting go experience. And if you know this and have made this experience, maybe then the actual prospect of physically dying later, one day, is less scary. And I think in this way, there's also this close connection between those two forms of experience. One is induced with a psychedelic substance, and the other one is the natural biological process for most people. If it goes well, of course, you can also have an accident. But yeah, so I think that's very interesting and very valuable, and that trainings that actually allow us to do grief work or end-of-life work, to become a death doula, as they say, end-of-life companion, that this can actually be very valuable for psychedelic facilitators. I think that's a great insight for me also from this conversation now again. Now, yeah, well, anything else you would like to mention? I feel like we've already come almost like we did a great round trip of stuff. Of course, you could dig in deeper in all kinds of ways. You have written some articles, some expert articles for our Insights or blog page, and people can check that out maybe as well. If they want to go deeper into certain questions, like how can I actually choose the right retreat provider? How do I know this is right for me? What are criteria anyway, right? And maybe also more answers even on how this looks like a well-facilitated, professionally facilitated retreat, where great care is taken to design a nice process and curriculum. How that looks like. I mean, you've written about that, so I will point people maybe also in the show notes to your articles. Is there anything else you feel is important that we haven't mentioned, that I haven't asked about today, that you would like to mention?
We did talk about it, but maybe it's a nice way of coming back to the very beginning. Is in the end, when you look for a psychedelic facilitator or a retreat provider, it's really important that there is resonance between you and them. So, because you just mentioned also the spiritual aspect of a psychedelic experience that can happen. For me, it's important that we cater all kinds of spirituality, but also more materialistic views, and that we do not try to influence anyone with a certain view of the world. And I'm saying that because you already mentioned the suggestibility that is happening through a psychedelic experience. So if you decide to go to a retreat or work with a facilitator that has a very strong spiritual point of view, you should be aware that this is going to influence your experience. So you should just know that you need to say yes to whatever their background is or spiritual belief, even before you go on this experience, because it will influence your experience. So if you feel like an ayahuasca ceremony that comes from the traditions of an indigenous group of people from the Amazon is not something that resonates with you in any way, then I would not recommend you to do that. If, on the other hand, this is exactly what you're seeking, then this might be exactly the right place for you. But just know that everything that the facilitators are bringing with them will be part of your experience as well. So this is why I would always advise to have at least one conversation with someone from the team or with the facilitator, and to really understand where they are coming from. What is it that they believe in? What is their point of view of this work even? What are they trying to achieve with this work? And to really try to understand if this is something that resonates with you.
No, I would very much highlight this. Thank you that you bring this up. I think there's a world of difference between traditional shamanic or indigenous kind of practices and worldviews, which are often much more animistic in their ontology and the way they see the world. And of course, on the complete other hand, maybe like a clinical therapeutic setting, more like a hospital kind of feeling. And in between, there's a whole world of people who do stuff, right? More neo-hippie-like, more psychotherapeutic, more personal development oriented. And the traditions that inform their work can be very different. Everything between Eastern and Western philosophies or cults. So there is like, and science, of course. So there's like a whole range of worldviews and ways of knowing, epistemologies, and then praxeology. So the way people practice their craft, and also, as you said, what they believe in, what their values are. And I think we talked today a lot about this kind of what could or does a professionally facilitated space look like, and how important it is to have a certain balance between closeness and support, and also being hands-off and just holding the space, and how important it is to know your own shadows and your own shit, be aware of it, so you actually can not put your own stuff into a process of someone else. And there have been many examples of experiences that were not well facilitated, where also facilitators committed transgressions because they were not professionally trained, or they didn't have their shadows clear. And then they bring in their own stuff there. And I don't even talk about, of course, messiah complexes, where people think they are enlightened and they're the gurus and they're the healers. They do everything. I don't even talk about those extreme cases, which are obviously pernicious or dangerous. But I mean, just people who are not aware of their own spiritual bypassing their shadows. So I think it cannot be stressed enough, and maybe not just one conversation, but several, and maybe also speak to people who attended the retreat if you can. And of course, have your own gut feeling when you look at all the material that they are publishing. Yeah, but triangulate, like get like feedback from different sides. Are they legit? Is this like, are people reporting good stuff or shady stuff, and so on? And so, because I think this is one of the most sensitive experiences one can have, and if you go into this, then you need to be able to trust, of course, fully. So I think this is really important, and I thank you that you pointed this out again, because of course we are part of this movement to try to bring like a certain kind of work into the world, and yeah.
Yeah, it's actually similar to picking the place where you want to die. So what kind of hospice do you feel comfortable with?
Yes, okay. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much, Patrick. If people want to reach out, how can they reach out? Where can they find you? How can they find you?
Well, the best way to get in touch with me is via email, patrick@evolute-institute.com, or you can also find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, and you have a new website online, I think, as well. What's the website?
Yes, that's my own personal website. It's called ocean-waves.life.
Yeah, and of course you're also in the team section of our Evolute Institute, so people find you there as well. But yeah, we will link to your personal profile and website as well. And of course, people can always reach out also to us, and then we would make the contact if they can't find you. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon, evening. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.